Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Roll call, please. Eastward Alderman John Quinn.
Here.
Eastward Alderman J.C. Cunningham.
Here. He's here.
Mayor Natalie McNish. Here. Westward Alderman Robert Boggs.
Here.
Westward Alderman Stacy Lee. Here. Right, if you would please stand for a moment of silent prayer or reflection, followed by the pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Hi, board members, the minutes from October 28th and November 3rd are included in your packet. Do we have any questions or comments on those? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion and second.
Make a motion. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Sorry.
Next up in your packet is expenditures and financial reports. Items of interest called out by our financial director are in the memorandum. Anything specific on there you want to call out?
No, you do have two claims reports. That first one is what has been sent out prior to this meeting to keep current. And then everything else should be fairly normal. The dump truck repair, we did receive the insurance check today for that reimbursement from that claim.
Okay.
And then just our annual license and support.
Is the Dude Solutions the one we talked about that was going up so significantly next year?
Yes, so it's got a pretty good percentage increase for next year, but we're gonna be looking at a different platform. So our Midland GIS, which has changed ownership, but there's a platform on there that we use for all of our utility work that has the capability of doing work orders, but I don't know to what extent. And so we're gonna be looking into that for next year. We're gonna leave Dude Solutions in there for 2022 budget. But
Okay.
for 2023, that may look a little bit different.
So is it the 2023 that's going to go up significantly, or is this year already gone up significantly?
It's this annual,
This one, okay. Any questions or comments on expenditures or financial reports? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion in a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Next up is departmental reports. So in your packet, you have a departmental report for the fire district and our utility usage. And then supplement to that, you have 2 pages for our leaf dump site on your table. The first one tells you the number of residents and number of visits that have visited in the short time we have been open. And the second page tells you who those individuals are and where they reside. Are there any questions or comments on these?
I've heard some positive feedback from people that have used it.
Awesome. JC, I see your name on it. What'd you think?
Yeah, they're too short too. I got 2 more on there. That's great. I mean, you got some good guys working out there too.
Okay,
Real nice.
I'm glad to hear that. All right. There is no action required to that. I just wanted to make sure we pointed those out. Next up is the COVID update. This is not included in your packet. These are supplemental reports. I received a report from the health board or health department shortly before this meeting. And so I sent it over to be printed. So that is this report you have. And then the other report that you have that looks like their dashboard is because prior to that, this is the only thing I had to give us. So this is older information that just looks like the dashboard. And the normal report is as of today. So you have 2 bits of information that you can review. This information is included just for your review. Is there any COVID-related actions that we need to discuss? Okay, hearing none, we'll go on. Next up is committees, boards, commissions, and reports. Mark, we want to start with a parks and tree update.
Yes, absolutely. We have stayed busy here. Let's see here. I got it. All right. Yeah, we've stayed really busy. We've finished out our soccer season and our first ever volleyball season a couple of weeks ago. And just this last Friday night, we had a paint your own masterpiece at the safe room that went really well. It was max capacity. In fact, we actually snuck a couple of extra people in on top of that. And Diana was there on site and reported and sent some pictures. That went really well. We have this next Friday night, we've got a parents' night out that we're getting ready for that will be there at the safe room. And we'll end up at the safe room a little bit later on in December with a wreath making class for one of those decorative wreaths. People can come in and make a wreath and take that wreath home with them for Christmas and put it on their door or give it away as a gift. And we're just continuing to program out there. The park subcommittees have met with SAP Design for the activity center program plan, as well as the concept design for Patriot Park. So those projects are in the works, and we're working with SAP Design on those. And other than that, it's been budget. And that's what we have to report at this time.
Very awesome. Any questions or comments for Mark?
Mark, if you could just relay a message to Diana, and I was at the Paint Your Own Masterpiece class, and she runs that to absolute perfection. It is fabulous the way she handles every aspect of it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Planning and zoning.
So we have a new subdivision that they're going to present tonight for the final plat. And there's the
Preliminary.
No,
Preliminary.
it's preliminary.
plat. Sorry about that. And then we had. Let me just.
We have a conditional use for the Church of Christ.
Yes, the conditional use for the
That's
Church of Christ. And I think that was pretty much it.
Yep.
Okay.
So the Church of Christ is adding on for classrooms and stuff. So
And just to kind of air that out a little bit, so we didn't have a conditional use on file for them. So obviously they're a church there now and they're allowed there now, but they're by what today's standards, they would have to have a conditional use. So it's just kind of clearing some things up so that we have one on file now. So pretty simple process.
Very good. The land use committee did not meet in November. They will meet the very first part of December. Is that correct? There are minutes from the October meeting in your packet. If you're interested to kind of review those, so no update there. Our transportation planning committee also did not meet this month. Do we have a meeting upcoming with them?
Sometime 1st of December, they had to let that 21 or 22 days, whatever it was, for the survey, and then they had to compile all the information from that. They did reach out and say that I think they had 120 or 140 responses from that. So it's not a terrible response, much better than what we got from the rail consolidation. So
Yeah. How many did we end up with from the LMI?
About 140.
So in a 22-day span versus all the work Grow put in to getting LMI responses back, I think that's pretty good. So good job, guys. Finance committee, Monica?
Sure, we met on November 8th and they were presented the cemetery fund, all the operational budgets so far, the cemetery fund, the transportation fund, and then the general fund. They did have some, they had a recommendation. They made a motion to recommend to the Board of Aldermen on the use of the industrial park funds for an outside firm for economic incentive policy. They had discussed that that was probably in Dwayne Lowery's wheelhouse as far as an economic development policy. And I probably was not able to communicate the differences of what the difference between what, the bid looked like and how that was presented.
So I reached out, I was unable to attend that meeting. I was actually sick that day. And so I reached out and I talked to Chan, who made the actual motion. And I talked to him about that, and I told him that was absolutely something that Dwayne would be able to help with and assist with and to weigh in on. But I tried to explain to him that was kind of the difference of the city is going to own that policy, and that's going to be a tool for us to use, and that's going to be a tool for Dwayne to use. It's not necessarily a policy that Dwayne and I are going to be able to put together, or even that we're equipped to put together. There's going to be a lot of legal ramifications that go along with that, and the step-by-step process of how that goes if somebody wants to come in and use an NID or a CID or tax abatement or whatever they might want to do. So I was trying to talk to Chan about that, and obviously I wish I could have been at the meeting, but I think in the end of it, at our next finance committee meeting, I think I'm going to talk to him and try to explain the difference of what we're doing, and that, this is going to be a policy that is going to help determine what we do as a city for somebody wanting to come in that may end up being millions and millions of dollars down the road. And so the city needs to own that policy, and the city needs to set that policy.
Right.
And then they need to be able to, the city, the leaders need to be able to have their say so in that, and then basically hand a tool over for us to have in our toolbox so that Dwayne and I can take that. And we get approached by these developers, we basically have something set in front of them and go, here's the minimum of what we can do. Therefore, it's not really a grow thing. It really needs to reside with the city thing, and then give that to grow and say, this is what we can do.
Absolutely. And so Dwayne has helped with this whole process from the origination of this is your next step, right? In fact, he is the one that got us in connection with Matt, who was the one who came and presented. He came in and did some community education back before the election. And so Dwayne has been involved in this whole thing. And I don't know if you might be available, but it might be of benefit if you're available for that particular meeting with the
That's actually
finance
going to be
committee.
on Monday, the 29th at 6 p.m. here.
If you're available.
Yeah.
And Rick McConnell is the other individual that had submitted a proposal, and so he's actually going to be here on the 15th, I think, of December to do a presentation of his proposal. So,
and I point out that these are the exact things that we want this committee to do, right? We want them to take a look at things that go, hey, we think this is what this should be doing instead of you. Now, it may not be correct, but we want to know those things from our citizens, right? That we want to know what they're thinking of the decisions we're making. So this to me is a perfect example of why that group exists, and very proud of them for doing their job.
I think it's a great idea, and I think it's great for them to be looking and saying, hey, we contribute to grow, and what can Dwayne bring to this? But I don't think that is the purpose and where we're at in that process. I think that we're looking for again, it's a tool for staff and for other people to use to be able to give that to people when they come in.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. Cemetery. JC, you want to give an update, or?
We haven't had a meeting, but I think one of these deals was going to talk to Paul about cleaning the stones. Did anybody talk to him about that?
I don't know that anybody has. Okay.
Not yet.
That's the
So-
only thing I know that's Larry.
Yeah, we have somebody, I guess, that's interested
Some
in
lady just like-
cleaning.
Just something to do. She wants to clean some elder stone. And she's just using that wet and done. It's not going to hurt nothing, but
Okay.
Jim Downing was thinking it might. cause
There would be
a problem.
some liability
Right,
involved, since
But it's just
technically it's
basic
personal
big
property,
water.
isn't it?
that wet and done.
Paul, do you have any guidance
Well,
on
I
that?
mean, I would say generally speaking, the people would own their own headstones. I mean, I would suggest if available, they would contact the,
Well, I think
Family and
mainly
so-
it's those older ones. It's
And these-
no one,
These are in the very, very old
Yeah.
limestone.
I mean, one of them's ours, but it wouldn't.
if they're super old and there's nobody to contact, there's probably nobody to make a
a claim
A
either,
claim.
right?
Yeah. And the only other thing I'd be careful with, because I've shockingly had 2 different lawsuits involving a cemetery over in the last decade, where people have leaned down to do something in a cemetery and then went like this on top of the cemetery to help themselves stand up
Hmm.
and pulled the headstones over on themselves.
Yeah.
So that's just,
I imagine they're heavy.
yeah.
Oh, my.
Okay.
So I mean, it's just kind of one of those obscure things that, and then they have filed lawsuits against the cemetery for not securing the stones properly and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So short of that, my recommendation is that to do it at the cemetery foreman's discretion, right? Let him say yes, no. He's gonna know who's been there and who hasn't, and who's gonna take care of it and who's not. I would have no idea. JC would have no idea, but he will.
Would there be a liability waiver that we could have the individual sign that would have any legal binding?
Probably not have a whole lot of binding effect, but
Okay.
I guess at the end of the day, could it hurt? No. I mean, it'd be like
Okay.
a paragraph thing, kind of like, yeah. people
You're doing
sign.
this at your own risk.
Yeah.
And by the way, don't pull on the headstones.
Don't pull this over on yourself.
I think what she was really wanting, she was wanting something to say it was okay in case someone come to her and said something.
Okay,
She was just wanting something for us to say
right.
that it was okay for her to be doing it.
Okay. So we'll let staff kind of handle what that looks like. And if we need something in writing, coordinate that with Paul. Thank you, JC. And we have Grow Marshfield. Wayne Lavery's here with us.
All right, great, yeah. I just got a few things here. A couple of these are repeats. I apologize because I didn't have my notes from last. The George Street building on the other side from Armstrong sold recently. And it sold to Jordan Valley Community Health Center. But the reason they got it is basically for some warehousing purposes to kind of cut down on some of the theft that they've had some of their other properties in Springfield and things like that. So unfortunately, it's probably not going to be a whole lot of jobs. I did talk to Brock Miller, CEO of Jordan Valley, about that particular project, and he told me there might be one person out there. So, so from a commercial industrial standpoint, like I said, it's not ideal for sure, but it has been sold. It's back into use, and we'll start seeing some activity there. Our environmental firm, it continues to do their retrofit. We're still looking at a first quarter startup for that, and I've been in regular communication with them. So as that moves forward, I'll keep you up to speed. The other George Street project, I'm still working with both parties. There's been no movement on either side since the last one. So, but anyone, we'll keep pushing that. One of our local industries is going through a small expansion right now. They're taking some of their existing property and enclosing it. It used to be kind of like an outdoor storage type unit, and they're enclosing it. I don't have the specifics on it, but they're enclosing that to move stuff from their production, some of their inventory to out there to create more room for production equipment for more jobs. And that's going on as we speak right now. At the same time, that same industry, and like I said, I can't give too details but Teresa and I are working this project. We're supposed to have another expansion coming in the spring. So we're hoping, Teresa, as I said, Teresa and I are working that project right now, and we'll see what happens with that. I met with I went to the Hawthorne Foundation Board of Directors meeting recently, was able to meet with the Missouri Partnership, talking about Marshfield assets, next year's cooperative program. That thing opens up next month. So we'll be getting involved in that. We just had 2 ribbon cuttings. This is Chamber report, 2 ribbon cuttings. Both the food truck over that is out there every Wednesday, Imperial, thank you. And then also, already lost me on the other ribbon. Prickly Cactus had one. They of course moved from where they were, and they've got their new location with a drive-through. Met with the folks. They're very happy, and that's going. The next one, we'll be having one next month. We've got another ribbon cutting. Barefoot Grill is open. They got a new restaurant. It's a sit-down restaurant. It's very nice if people get a chance to go over there. Another part of the surveys out there of what the local constituents have liked. They'd like to see a restaurant, and I think this might fit the bill for them. So we're excited about that. There, over on Prairie Lane, there's a building over there. It's only about 11,000 square foot. It's a fairly new building. It's been on the market for quite a while, or about 6-8 months, I should say. And that has sold. Okay. I get the question, well, what's going on over there? All I can tell you is, one, it's sold. And I've looked at the records, and it's a company called NO LLC. It's either No LLC or NO. And I've followed up. I'm trying to follow up a little bit more. Have you heard from them at all? It's a trucking company. Okay. Because they're doing a lot of dirt work over there as well. So I've been trying to find out. Okay, good. So I'll get with you and get the details on that. So, but hopefully there'll be a few folks over there working, but they're doing a whole lot of dirt work, and they cleared a whole bunch of space next to that. So I was wondering what was happening there. So that makes a lot of sense. Thanks. Over in MACF, Kelly Fiscus, who of course is new chamber coordinator, is now the MACF coordinator as well. If you remember, Casey did that jointly as well when she was here, and now Kelly is also going to pick up the mantle both as a chamber coordinator and as MACS coordinator. So it's a nice fit that Kelly's going to pick up that and has been approved to move forward. MDL met this month, gave them an update. They had a presentation from Stan Whitehurst with the county about transportation planning and working with MoDOT and how we go forward, and how MDL might be able to work with some of our local legislators to see if we can, enhance Webster County and Marshfield's opportunity for transportation projects. I asked him to come, and because right now with the new infrastructure bill being passed, we're looking at a lot of extra funding that's going to come to Missouri that we need to be prepared for. And like any other time, we've got to have the planning done. We've got to have it done in advance, because the monies are coming. Whether we agree with the bill or not, doesn't matter. The monies are coming, and the more prepared that we are, then I think the better chances we are going to get those funds to expand our transportation infrastructure here. The final thing I got is Show Me Power is going to be assisting Grow and the city with updating the economic development videos that we've got out there. So I'll be meeting with Tim Lewis and their videographer this week and get some more ideas on the process, and then hopefully we'll have an updated video for us for marketing purposes put on our websites.
Yeah, and I talked to him this week as well. So I think we're going to be looking at rolling out all the videos on the website for next year. So
That's awesome.
hopefully we'll have that done hopefully within the next quarter, but hopefully by June next year we'll have ours up.
Okay.
Any questions? All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, we will continue on to unfinished business. So we have a newly proposed contract in the packet for Grow Marshfield. Do we have any questions or comments on the newly proposed contract? This has been reviewed by Paul. He didn't have any questions with it. This proposes a 1-year contract with automatic renewals. Is that correct, Paul? Am I reading that accurately? So it's 1 year at 100,000, then it drops 10,000 a year. There was one area that kind of confused me as far as the wording. It's under number 3, compensation. And it starts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down with Grow Marshfield shall submit periodic billing statements detailing how city funds have been or will be utilized. And then it goes on to say, as soon as we get the billing statement, we have to pay, but we only pay once a year. And I don't know, that all seemed a little confusing to me. So I might like to propose something to replace that language if the board was interested. Just something that would be more clear, that we pay upon invoice, but separately there will be reporting periodically from Grow. instead of it making it sound like we're gonna pay every time we get something from growth. That's not what we meant.
So are you looking for a motion just on that verbiage for that section?
No, not necessarily. I would like to tweak that particular portion. I don't necessarily need a motion on that until we revise it and come back. But I wanted to know if you were all in agreement that that was what we intended. We intended to pay one time a year, but have periodic reporting on how the money was utilized.
Yes.
Okay, because to me, that's not quite what this is saying, and I just wanted to clear it up. That way, if I'm not sitting in this chair, somebody else can't misinterpret it. I hope.
I'd make a motion to approve the contract as it's written, other than the section 3.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the contract as written. Do I have a second? Motion dies for lack of a second. Would we like additional time with the contract, or do we have a different proposal?
I would like to propose like maybe 80,000 the first year. With giving them, that gives them time to set up what was originally discussed in the setup of this, which was that there would be some funds replaced with outside.
The
With
fund,
people contributing from outside resources, taking other companies to partner with Marshfield now or whoever else wants to, but I would like to, if we do that, I'd like to maybe relook at it in July, just to see where that's at with, because now we'd be 3.5 years in at that point,
okay,
with one of the main things that they had set up from the start. Just want to see that kind of, carried through.
kind of moved forward.
That's my,
So you would like a one-year contract at 80,000, and then you want us to just go ahead and make sure we put it on the calendar so it gets reviewed again in July.
to see where we're at with additional funds being donated,
Okay,
just to see where we're at with that.
okay,
So that we don't get in this particular situation where we're so far into the year that we need to get something done.
right,
Just have a little bit more, for everybody's benefit, I think.
okay.
That's my personal thought.
Conversation, comment on that proposal?
Well, my thinking was that it is so far into the end of the year that to not be telegraphing what our intentions are earlier, it's kind of makes people that we partner with, I don't know, it makes us look, would you say, unreliable? That's probably not the right word, but unpredictable.
I would maybe agree with that, except for 3 years ago, they'd set forth that they wanted to, for the city not to contribute at the same thing forever, that they would have partners. And so I would agree, except for I feel like 3 years ago, they kind of set that in motion.
I just wish they would have set a time. Something that really lays out telegraphing what our moves are.
Yeah.
And that's all.
And so, and maybe that's right. That's what I think we kind of stuck with doing that now.
Okay,
I think this contract needs to come back to us never, ever again in December.
okay,
Or our budgeting, their budgeting. To me, that's ridiculous.
so part of that was on my timing. I was hoping that the board would get to know more about growth, and then we would bring in the contract, and so I think we presented it the first time in September. And so that was my timing, trying to get familiarity before we hit you with a contract for X $100,000. So I do apologize for that, because yes, you're right. That's the situation we're in now, where we're getting up to the end of the year. And so that timing is my guidance as to when they would present the contract.
But I agree with Robbie. 80 grand at a 1-year contract,
Okay,
I can get behind.
and you'd like to see a new draft presented, and then we'll go for a vote?
Yes. And I would also like to say, because I know where John's at, like, with MDL kicking in the extra 20,000, that's the exact same budget that they've had. So there is no decline in funds.
That is true.
Gives them a year to prep. for, because I'd like to see the city gradually.
We just have so many other things that we need
Step
to
back.
fund that it is
Yeah.
very
We got to
difficult.
take care of our stuff.
It is very difficult, yeah, to
Okay, we will redraft and come back and there can be additional discussion at that time. When is our next?
Second,
The second. Okay, so we'll make sure that we have a contract that can come back on the second. Is that doable?
I think so. Do you have the original contract?
Yes.
So we can modify that
Okay,
so what I've got is for a 1 year, $80,000.
And then changing the compensation,
just putting some
the tweaking,
clarification in
and that's,
there. Yeah,
that's an easy change.
yeah, that's just wording.
And if it would commence January 1 of 2022, like this one does.
Yes,
With the,
but let's go ahead and put something in the contract that requires the city to look at it in July.
not as date certain, because we don't know when the meeting would fall necessarily, but
Right.
July.
In July, it
July
has to come back on a July agenda for the next year's contract.
And then why were we going with 3 years on this? I mean, because we were doing it year by year, right?
No,
The
the
So this
original
is-
commitment was 3 years, 100,000.
This is the last year of the original 3-year commitment.
So
The difference is we just didn't have a contract before. So this is putting it into a contract.
Okay. So we will table that resolution. I'm gonna make a note here. All right, the next item up is a wage survey, and I have passed out 2 sheets of paper for you. One doesn't have quite as many colors on it as the last item that I provided you, but it's still nice and colorful. And the other page is a secondary idea. So let's start with the colorful page here. So you had asked me to provide kind of a, where does the 3.7 get us? And then where would mid-range of those salaries, that salary range be, and where would somewhere between the low point and mid-range, I called it low mid-range, would that be, and how much would it cost to get to each one of those? So as you can see, I've outlined that for each one of these employees. There are 3 in that 3.7 box that I want to call out. 2 of them are highlighted yellow and the other one just has a box because I forgot to change color. Those have other compensation criteria that are calculated into them other than the 3.7. So our court clerk is changing, and within that negotiation, we negotiated a specified pay rate. So that amount is the pay rate we negotiated, not the specific 3.7%. The officer that you see in here is a new promotion within our department. And the way the force works is you go through a 6-month probation period before you get your compensation increase. So while that promotion has already been awarded, the compensation that goes with that has not, and it would be awarded in May. So because of that change, that has additional compensation in it. And then the other one is our Parks Director, Mark Baker, and you already know and have talked about the additional increase that's in there. Everybody else is just 3.7. And then you can see it would cost us another 100,000 to get to the low mid range. And on top of that, it would, well, from 3.7 to mid range would cost us almost $250,000. So those are the numbers that we're playing with. And then I want to give you a different option as we look at this and as we go through the budget. So if you take this other sheet that's just not so clear. So my idea of going to pay ranges instead of steps was providing, one, getting away from that glass ceiling, right? Two, it was to put us within range of other fourth-class cities that are approximately our size. And three, the other thing that I'm trying to do here is I'd really like to not have compensation decisions made at this level. Because I'm gonna be real honest, I don't know the difference between the work product of Rick and Steve or Karen, because I don't work here every single day. I happen to think they're all absolutely fantastic. And so it makes sense for us to give CPI type, COLA type across the board increases. But truly, there's a limit to what you can do when you keep raising everybody up at the exact same level at the exact same point, right? And so ultimately, the idea is to give back control of workforce salaries to the department heads and our city administrator where it belongs. So I asked Monica to calculate how much wages across the board increased at that 3.7, which is the 69. And then I asked her to calculate how much wages would increase if we only did 2%. And that is 37, 683.54. The difference between those is about $32,000. And so then I sat back and I said, okay, how would we allocate that to the different funds? And could we then empower our department heads and our city administrator to make decisions based off of performance evaluations as to who gets that money? And so I went through a couple of different calculations to try to figure out how we would break up the money fairly. As far as the percentages that you see for general fund, water fund, wastewater treatment park, those are calculations that I did based on the total amount of salary that comes out of those funds versus the total amount of salaries paid. Okay, so that's what those percentages are. But in order to really break down general, because we have general, administrative, street, and police that all come out of there, the first thing I did was I looked at percentage of salaries paid, and then I looked at number of employees. And those are the two tables you have to the right side of that. All in all, I kind of feel like the number of employees is probably a more equitable approach, because the more employees you have, probably the more amount of money it would take to give even a minuscule raise to anybody. But all in all, as you can see, for police, it doesn't really change. It doesn't matter if we use percentage of salaries or allocation by number of employees, it's almost the same number. But it does change for general and administrative and street. It is a different perspective there. But if you look at the number of employees that they have to break that amount of money across, or even if it's just particular employees within, it may change the story. So I wanted to provide you with another option. And what this option would be to leave the 3.7 in the budget as it stands, only award a 2% COLA on January 1, ask that performance evaluations were done at the first of the year, and then empower our city administrator and our department heads to decide where the rest of it goes. It doesn't change the budget. It may slightly. The thing is, we have so many salaries, so many individuals that are allocated over so many different funds that it is possible the person that gets a $2,400 a year raise hits every single one of those funds, right? And so, yeah, it could change the amount that we have currently budgeted for salaries, but it would be a pilot to see how this operated. And there would be no requirement that they award all of the amount of salary increases. It would be management's discretion.
I like giving the power back to the department heads to make those determinations, since we would have no idea. And I like, I like keeping the 2% because it's at least keeps them from getting zero.
Yeah,
They know if they got a 2% that they didn't do what they didn't do what they should have done. They may not have carried their own weight or may have had some other problems, but at least it keeps them from.
and we really do have limited funds to provide the department head, so we know they're not going to be able to give, by the looks of things, they're not going to be able to take that and divide it by their entire force and give them something, right? And all in all, that kind of defeats the purpose, because we would also be providing them with the pay ranges and the goal of what we're wanting to get to. There was no expectation that we were going to make even the bottom numbers this year. The board would maintain full control over 3 salaries. City administrator, police chief, and not full control, but part control on parks director. Just because the way the ordinance is written, we have co-authority with the parks board in that position.
Those, and I hate nothing more than talking about someone's paycheck while I sit in the room with them. It makes me uncomfortable. That money is additional to this
Yes.
69. Okay.
So the 69 already includes the one we have already approved.
Okay.
So the one we have already approved is taken care of. Any adjustment that the board wanted to make on the other 2 could be made, but is not included in our current budget or this worksheet. So there is no need for action tonight. I was just looking to put information in front of you so that you could make the best decision possible. But any adjustment that you might want to make to any particular salary does need to be voiced at some point, because as budget draws near, we're really hoping to get this thing across the finish line before Christmas.
Well, I think we do need to look at those other 2.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We most certainly can.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
I said, I think we definitely need to look at the other 2
The
That
logo
we
and new
directly
name?
maintain,
that we
manage.
directly impact. Sam and Doug.
Oh, okay.
I'll get information together on both of those and make sure it's available for the December 7th meeting. 2nd, I don't know. When is it now? 2,
Second.
12/2, 12/2, okay. Somebody make sure I show up on the right day. All right. So thank you very much for letting me present this information, and we will look for additional direction from you on how we want to handle the COLA at the next meeting. Okay, our next item on here is the Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission Traffic Engineering Assistant Program Agreement. Sam?
So as you guys know, we applied for the TEEP grant for the Hubble Drive corridor for Elm Street and Hubble, and then Pine Street and Hubble, and Marshall and Hubble, and to do a speed study down Elm Street. We were awarded that grant, and then you guys selected Brett River off of the pre-qualified engineering list for MoDOT. So then MoDOT requires an ordinance to authorize us to go into that agreement, and so that's what this is. And so by doing so, they've all switched over to DocuSign. So this is an ordinance authorizing me to sign an agreement with MoDOT for the purpose of the TEEP grant. Natalie will actually sign the ordinance, but I will be signing the agreement from here on out.
Absolutely. Any questions for Sam on the TEEP grant? Okay, if not, I will go into reading the bill. Bill number 2021-39, an ordinance to authorize the city administrator to execute an agreement between the city of Marshfield and the Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission, providing for a Hubble Drive corridor study and operational analysis in the city of Marshfield as described in TEEP 059.
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please. Sam?
Aye.
Boggs?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Cunningham?
Aye.
Second reading. Bill number 2021-39, an ordinance to authorize the city administrator to execute an agreement between the city of Marshfield and the Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission, providing for a Hubble Drive corridor study and operational analysis in the city of Marshfield as described in TEEP 059.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Aye.
Boggs.
Aye.
Lee.
I,
Cunningham.
Aye.
Thank you very much. That brings us into new business. The first item up is our property and liability insurance bid award. Monica?
We went out to bid for our property and liability insurance. We did only receive one bid. And there, we had someone else who was interested in it, but the timeline, we went out to bid for 2 weeks and our timeline was too short for another vendor to submit a bid. So we may look at that in the future, extending that bid timeframe. But we did receive a bid from our current provider, and it is less than 1% of an increase over last year. And you know, some items may have gone up while others may have gone down. I'm still working on putting that all in the budget document as far as what that would entail for each department and fund. But overall, it looks good as far as what we have paid last year. So.
And that is great news for us. Not only is 1% just amazing, but we calculate all of our base budgets with 10%.
Yes.
So that gives us a little bit of a breathing room in what we currently have.
So all the
In our
budgets you've
budgets.
seen, they've had 10% in there. So when it comes back to you guys, it will have the actuals in there if you guys accept this bid tonight.
Any questions for Sam or Monica on this bid process or the proposed award? Okay, if not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the award for the sole bidder on the property and liability insurance.
Make that motion.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Now we have a report from Planning and Zoning and the Edgeman Estate preliminary plat. Steve, Rick?
I need to kind of stay out of this one as much as possible.
Because he's related.
I'm related.
Oh,
So,
okay, you're out. Steve's
So
up.
we had a preliminary plat for the Edgeman property, which is an extension of the Grandview Street off of Marshall. And so this portion of it is approximately 5.69 acres. And this part is all in the city limits except one little tiny piece, just because of the way they set it up. The idea is that they plan to annex the rest of their property into the city when they get ready to do the next phase. So right now, this phase will have 17 lots. They will extend Grandview and they will have a new street, which is called Arlene. And it will be a cul-de-sac. They will extend all the utilities needed for the subdivision. And they will also have water detention, which will actually be located in the county initially until they get that property annexed in. We didn't have a problem with that because since they own all the property and they own all the property from this new addition all the way down to Buffalo Street is where they own. So we had no problem. They don't know if they will reduce that size, the size of that detention later when they build out. They know they'll have to have another detention area even further south when they complete all of this. One of the unusual aspects of this is they will have covenants, and in the covenants, it will be required to have sidewalks at each lot. And I was very pleased with that, and that was a recommendation that they had, that they would put it in their covenants. And the reason they were doing it in the covenants and having it done by the contractor is a lot of times if you put the sidewalks in first, before you get anything built,
heavy equipment going across it will break it up and tear it up. And it's just in the way. And so by putting it in the covenant so that you have to build it when you build the actual residence makes sense. And we do get the sidewalks in the subdivision.
Thanks.
Okay. Any questions?
I got a question just because I'm interested.
No.
Having the retention pond in the county, which I know is the best for that situation, does that ever leave us to where something could change and you don't have any control over that since it's not in the city? I know they're moving it to the city. I'm just asking.
We didn't anticipate an issue because the county has no zoning, so we're not stepping on any toes, so to speak. So we didn't see that as an issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Any other questions for Steve on this preliminary plat? If not, we will carry on. This has already been approved by planning and zoning and
Our code again just states that when we have a preliminary plat come through planning and zoning, once they approve it, then it comes to the board of aldermen for review. That's no action needed on it.
absolutely.
They can't do anything with the property. It's just saying that we are on board if they want to move forward this process.
They're ready to start as soon as we get everything, right?
That was what they expressed to us at P and Z. They're ready to go.
So there'll be a final.
As soon as they can get
plat.
materials.
There'll be a final plat that comes back and it'll go to planning and zoning to be approved. Now that will get approved by ordinance from you all. And then once that is approved, they can start construction. They can start building their infrastructure.
All right.
The way I took it, they didn't talk on anything like sidewalk and everything. They're ready to do all that. But we're trying to, other places trying to talk on that.
Yes. Yeah, and the way this went, the way this
That's what I like.
developer set it up was to put it in the
Covenants, which
covenants.
almost always works. I've seen a few where a neighbor will buy a lot and then not do it.
Oh, and so you end up with a whole.
You can have that, but it is in my, not that my opinion matters for much, but it is probably the smartest way to do it too, because like, you got to tear it out to put the driveways in and then you got to put it all back. So it does save a lot of money.
Okay,
in the
that makes
long run.
sense. That does make sense. All right, next we're on to cemetery fees. Sam, are you going to present on this one?
So through the budget process, we were just like every other department, we started looking at fees. And so we put it in front of the board or in front of the cemetery board to look at that. And Sean had done some research. Sean is our cemetery foreman. And so he had done some research and he'd given us a spreadsheet basically with a breakdown of what some other cemeteries were charging for their fees. And so believe it or not, it's not all that common for cities to actually own own a cemetery. And so when we do find them, we try to compare to those. And so Karen, you may have to help me here just a little bit, but we increased all of the fees across the board. And so we have a cost per lot. There's an in-town and out-of-town fee. There is a grave opening. There's a cremation space. Is that spreadsheet in here?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry.
All right.
Yeah, there you go. So you can see what he found from other places too. Some of those are that Hazelwood Cemetery is the one right there on Battlefield up there in Springfield. So it's a pretty fancy cemetery. But the cemetery board looked at that and compared it to other rates around. And so you'll see what they approved as far as the Marshfield proposed new rates effective 1/1/2022. So in order to do that, those are fees and those are set by ordinance. So you guys would have to approve those by ordinance.
And so I always like to go back and, read the last time I think the section was updated. I know that the August section was when we changed the rules for Sunday burials. So the last time that these rates could have been, because I haven't pulled these ordinances, could have been updated was either in 09 or 14. So probably long overdue some adjustment. Any questions or concerns in this area?
Out of curiosity, why do we not charge for infant grave space if we charge to open an infant grave?
You have to have the same size of space for them, but the space, but the actual opening is smaller.
It's just,
Does that make sense?
we don't do a separate one. They pay for a grave space, period, whether it's an infant or not.
It's a shovel, not a
Gotcha.
back.
Same size of lot,
Gotcha.
but
Okay.
smaller hole, less
Yeah.
time, less labor.
Like he said, a shovel, not a backhoe.
Yeah.
So,
I thought the way it.
It's not a zero
We
fee.
didn't charge
Right.
for.
Yeah, the only reason we put that in a column in there is because Hazelwood Cemetery had a different space fee.
For an infant.
Right. Otherwise, it wouldn't have even been in the table.
That makes sense.
Okay,
I was reading it wrong.
okay. Hearing no questions or concerns, I will read the bill. Bill number 2021-40, an ordinance amending chapter 125 Cemetery Board, section 125.060 K and P of the Marshfield City Code, being a section on rules and regulations, changing the cemetery fees.
Move to approve.
Roll call, please. Wynn. Boggs.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Cunningham.
Aye.
Second reading. Bill number 2021-40, an ordinance amending chapter 125 Cemetery Board, section 125.060 K and P of the Marshfield City Code, being a section on rules and regulations, changing the cemetery fees.
Make a motion.
Roll call, please. Boggs.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Cunningham.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next up is amending business license chapter, and this is both business licenses and peddler's licenses. Steve, would you like to walk us through this?
Yes, this is a request that came from one of the aldermen to look at the our cost of business license. Ours right now is set at $18. So what I did was I reviewed other cities the same size and located in Southwest Missouri to do a comparison. And what I found was that we were really low in our fee. And to bring us up to match the others, we would need to bring it up to $25. And so that's what this is talking about. The other thing we did was we actually went through our whole code just to make sure that there weren't anything else that we might need to update. And we made some modifications because we did find some information that helped protect our citizens when we had people going out, and you're going to see part of that in the peddler's license, because they have to do a background check because they're going out into the public. But the way it was written before is some of them expected to come right to the window and be able to get that. And so we've added a notation here that there will be a waiting period for that, so they can't have that expectation. Also, that you have a peddler, then you have solicitors who work under the peddler sometimes. And so in the past, we would allow 10 or 15 people out and only had to pay one fee. Now we've got it set up so one person pays the $25. Anybody else who's working with them pays $10. So that would help cut down. The other thing that we did was we changed the hours that they could actually go about doing this. And the hours have been changed from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. to 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And that's Monday through Friday. Saturday, noon, is that right? Noon to 6?
Yeah,
I think that's right.
on Saturday.
And no peddling on Sunday. So that's not even allowed. So we put in some of those changes, and then we also updated our violations and penalties so that we actually had grounds to revoke their license, because ours really didn't say that. It just said, well, you can't come back for a year, so to speak.
Oh.
And so we really revamped the whole thing so that it was more in keeping with the standards of other cities our size.
Okay.
Okay,
So on the business licenses, the only thing we're doing within this bill is increasing the fee to 25. Is that correct?
yes.
Okay, Alderman, I'm looking for any
Well,
questions.
I'm sorry. We are increasing the fee to 25, but we're also implementing some of the other,
The business hours or the operating hours.
yes, well, that's under the.
That's the peddlers.
So that one's going to be a little bit different. But under this one, toward the end,
The violation and penalty?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
so the changes on business licenses is the fee and the violation and penalty section, which allows the revocation. Do we have any questions or concerns on these changes? And this is just on the business license. We'll get to peddlers in a minute. Hearing none, I'll go ahead and read the bill. Bill number 2021-41, an ordinance amending chapter 605 of the municipal code of the city of Marshfield, being a section on business license.
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please. Ann?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Anyone?
Aye.
Second reading, bill number 2021-41, an ordinance amending chapter 605 of the municipal code of the city of Marshfield, being a section on business license.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please. Ann?
Aye.
Boggs?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Cunningham?
Aye.
Thank you. Now we'll move to the peddlers and solicitors section. And this one, we changed the fee and the hours and the penalty and violation.
Yes,
Okay.
we did.
Does the board have any questions or comments on those changes? Hearing none, I will read the bill. Bill number 2021-42, an ordinance amending chapter 610 of the municipal code of the city of Marshfield, being a section on peddlers, solicitors, and canvassers.
Move to approve.
Roll call, please. Quinn?
Aye.
Boggs?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Cunningham?
Aye.
Second reading, bill number 2021-42, an ordinance amending chapter 610 of the municipal code of the city of Marshfield, being a section on peddlers, solicitors, and canvassers.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please. Quinn?
Aye.
Boggs?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Cunningham?
Aye.
Thank you all. Next item up is blowers at the wastewater treatment plant. Sam?
So we're gonna get into growth areas here in just a minute, but this was budgeted. The funds were appropriated for this as a growth area for 2021. So we took a look at where we're at. We took a look at what we spent and the year that we've been having the treatment plan. And so some of the main concerns down there obviously have always been these blowers, and some of them are starting to get some age on them. There was a point early this year, late last year, early this year, somewhere there. We actually got down to one blower. Really started to get a little bit nervous on their lead times. It's just like anything else. When we need them, everybody else needs them, it seems like. And so what we did, there was $40,000 appropriated for this expenditure in growth areas, which would have to come from cash. But I wanted to put this before you all tonight to, I went ahead, when we get to the growth areas, I've kind of taken it out of there in anticipation or in hopes that you guys would approve. We went ahead and bid out one of our large blowers, which we have two different size blowers on the reactors up there. And so it doesn't take near as much air, doesn't take near as much power in the cooler months. And so we run our smaller ones when it's cold. And then these larger ones run majority of the time when the demand is so high. And so out of that 40,000, had originally planned on possibly switching over to one of the smaller ones again for energy savings. We can't keep up with the dissolved oxygen in there. And so the bigger blower puts more oxygen into it. And so what we really want to do is have one of these as a spare. And so what we're looking at doing is buying a new blower, actually installing it while it's under warranty, making sure it all works. Take our other one out, have it gone through and using that one for a spare on the shelf to make sure that we have one, so that we don't have one sitting on the shelf, just sitting there letting that warranty run out on it. So so we went ahead and got prices on it. And so there's only two people that would give us a price on the larger one. As you can see, what we're looking at, looking for approval and a recommendation to approve the $17,648 for the larger blower. And then we also have digesters up there where we actually decant the water off, and we have to keep air pushing to that. That's what those big storage containers were that you guys saw up there that we actually pull the water off of, and then we haul our solids off. Those actually, there are multiple tanks up there, and so we can actually use different blowers up there. We can basically transfer air from one blower at the other end to the other end and bypass and not have to go into those tanks. However, that's not ideal. And so since we had the $40,000 appropriated for that, we did have a spare on the shelf. That spare is now in use. This would replenish that spare. If it hadn't been over my personal authority, if it hadn't been over the $5,000, then I would have just bought it anyway and went ahead and had it on the shelf just so we had it to go back in. So what I'm looking for tonight is for you guys to consider, or I'm asking for you guys to approve the purchase of both of those pumps and get them off of the growth areas for next year.
So this is one blower and one digester.
This is two blowers, one for the reactors and one for the digesters.
Or are we talking?
So one of the big ones and one of the small ones? So
So
one
one-
at 17 and one at 5?
Yeah, so keep
Okay.
in mind, we have big ones, we have big blowers and smaller blowers at the reactors. This would be one new big blower at the reactor,
Mhm.
which we haven't bought a new one since 03 on the big one. And then this would put a spare, this would give us a spare back for the digesters up top.
Okay.
Is that a good principle, or because is it under warranty? So I'm just asking, like the same thing as like the reactor, you're gonna use the warranty one.
Yep, we'll take the new one, we'll put it in, we'll send the other one off and have it gone through, and that will be the spare on the shelf.
What about on the digester? Would you do the same thing for it? Okay.
So we are, sorry,
Nope.
I apologize. I jumped right in the middle of that. So we are, if there aren't any other questions, we are looking for a motion to authorize expenditure of $23,000 from cash to purchase a large blower for the reactor and a smaller pump for the digester, which would allow us to put a spare back on the shelf.
I'd make a motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. There you go. All right, Sam, court clerk.
Our current court clerk, Jessica Jones, is retiring, or I would say is effective as of today. She is retired. And so Jessica has been just a great asset for us, and she had some court experience, and so it's been just nothing short of fantastic to work with her. So we want to congratulate her on that and support her in that, but in the same process, we had to fill that position. So we opened that position internally. And so Melanie Brown, which is our deputy collector up front, she has selected and elected to take that position. And so we worked through a little bit of negotiation on that. So she's going to take that. She's actually going to step down into a part-time position. She will stay full-time doing her current job and doing this other job, doing the court clerk stuff until we work through a few things and see how that's all going to shake out. In this process, the court system, the actual payments and the scheduling and everything those operations are actually going to move into City Hall. And so which is why you kind of see a desk in here and you see some of this stuff. This will give us that 100% separation that OSCO wants us to have anyway. There will be some challenges with it as far as moving back and forth when we do have court, and so it's not going to be just seamless. But in that process, you guys may or may not recall, but I can't be on those bank accounts. Stacy can't, Natalie can't. So the only two people that are allowed to be on there are the court clerk and the judge. And so what we need to do, what I'm looking for tonight is, and it has to be recorded, that the bank has to have actual minutes from the city to be able to do this. And so what I'm looking for is for the removal of Jessica Jones from the accounts and the addition of Melanie Brown to the court accounts.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, board. 2022 budget growth areas.
So I know you guys had a lot of handouts, so don't want to get too much stuff in front of you, but. So we, our department heads, every year, they go through, they try to evaluate everything that we need and that we need to be looking at on the horizon. One thing that they didn't do this year, because they saw where we were, basically financially, our current rate system and where we're going to be spending in cash anyway. What you don't see is a big wish list. What you see in front of you is more of a reality. So past years, what I've asked them to do is I said, hey, put everything down that would make your job easier and that would make it more efficient and that you really would like to have. And then we'll come together and in the past, we have presented that to the finance committee or even to the board. But that's a pretty unrealistic list, but it is, I do think it's a good practice for our guys to have to go through. And I think it's a good practice for elected officials and myself and Monica to really step back and go, this is what they're wanting. What you see this year though, is a lot further scaled down to a little more what is realistic. So there's two different sheets here. So the first one you'll notice up in the top left-hand corner, you'll see one of them says department head draft, and then you'll see a proposed. So we'll walk through these, but so you'll see there's a few differences in there, but I mean, the one on the left is what the department heads turned in. Then we come back together as staff, and then Monica and I sit down, and then we help them prioritize those, and we say, okay, this is maybe realistic, this is not realistic, there's no way this has happened, this is what it would take to make this happen. And so what I really want to focus on really is the proposed, because that's what we're really gonna be talking about. Do you want to walk down through here? Just you may start, just take off, Natalie,
Yep.
and
just start going down each one of them. Okay. So you'll see up at the top, we have these used utility trucks. This used utility truck, these are funds that you guys have already approved. I'm still looking for these vehicles, right? And so this one here, we just haven't been able to find it yet. The mini excavator, we actually found it. We bid it out. We purchased it, hoping to have it the first week of December. Availability, I just don't know, but those are approved. Those monies will be coming out of that account. It's just dependent on the availability when we can get it. The IT services, we talked about that a little bit when we were talking about in the budget presentation. So we currently are not under contract for IT services. We spend $30,000 to $50,000 on IT services per year. But and I know that's a big range, but it just kind of depends on the necessity. We do everything basically on a reactive note. We're not doing anything on a proactive note. This would put us, this dollar amount is estimated to put us into a contract with an IT company. There's a little bit of legwork that goes into that as far as doing an RFQ for that, pulling in and selecting qualified vendors, then negotiating that cost. But this would allow us to be a little bit more proactive on some of our replacement, on some of our cybersecurity, and it would have that oversight and expertise that we need to move forward. Again, it's going to affect some of the effect on some of these funds are going to be from the IT side are not going to be that significant because of the way that we allocate now. But I will tell you that the $5,000 to the cemetery is going to be significant because that what they get allocated right now is not very much. So there's some things that we'll point out when we bring back the final budget, depending on what you guys want to put in there for the final budget for 2022. The street department, part-time help, you'll notice, not to just jump way ahead, but you'll notice in the street department and then on down and below in the water and sewer, there's $10,000 per department for part-time help. That is the part-time help that we have right now for basically that we have for driving the dump trucks. This puts a qualified person in there driving those trucks to where our full-time staff can be boots on the ground doing what they need to be doing while there's still progress happening. And so it's been a very, very big help this year to be able to do that. But just a reminder, probably looking at spending cash if we do that moving forward, because the hope and the intent, the only reason we've been able to do it and not be into cash so far is because we do have some open positions that are not filled. The hope and intent is to fill those positions with qualified people, which should help reduce the amount that we need to use this part-time help. But I'm telling you, for Prairie Lane and for these jobs that we've been doing, when we start getting into haul and fill and stuff, this has been a game changer. The paint machine, again, that is something we talked about in the transportation fund that would allow us to do the painting in-house, which we would basically get more linear feet for the same money if we were to purchase our equipment. Animal control training. This is something that really does need to be in the budget. This is for the MACA and NACA track training for Missouri and national animal control training. This is basically to put our guy, and Rick's been through some of this, but this basically kind of puts them through the training. So whenever they go out there and they run into a situation where can they enter the property, can they do this or that? What do they respond to? What do they not do? What do they need to document? This is just a little bit of guidance for them that obviously nobody has that knowledge and expertise in-house. Just a little bit of protection for our employees. So you'll notice that if you were to look at the stat at the department head draft, you'll see that there is a dump truck in there and this 1-ton utility dump truck. Those dump trucks have raised up to even again, so they're closer to $200,000 now than what they were the 150. And the availability, we were told that if we ordered one now, we probably would not get one until 2023. So the availability is an issue there. Whenever I went up to Farm Fest this year, and I was looking at some stuff that Bus Andrews put on, and they actually equipped a truck, a 1-ton dually for the city of Houston, and they put a dump bed on a 1-ton dually, and they equipped it with snowplow equipment. They actually it's got a dump bed on it that the sides actually fold down and come off of it to where it's not just a dump truck, but they can use it as a flatbed truck as well. And then you can actually it's all plumbed for inclement weather, for snow removal, for ice control, for our salt. It's all stainless. It was a really, really good setup. That truck would be a more versatile piece of equipment. I'm not saying that we could replace all of our dump trucks, that we would want to replace all of our dump trucks, because you're probably talking about being able to go from hauling 8 to 10 ton of material down to probably 3 to 5, depending on what you're doing. But these tight spaces that we get into, for instance, like one of the purposes we're buying that mini excavator is for those tight spaces. This would help us accommodate that as well, without losing the functionality of being able to use it as a dump truck. And so our department heads looked at it, and for the money and for the purpose, and because they could use it in every department, they were more on board with trying to do something with a truck like that, rather than trying to spend $200,000 on a dump truck that is just used for that. The used truck that we did buy right now, it's doing great. I think that right now it was a good purchase. We'll see how it goes throughout the year, but it's been really good to us so far. This new building at the treatment plant, that is building for the water and sewer department. So basically what that would do is that would get all of our guys that work together in those crews and our supervisor together in the same place of a morning and of an evening, and that would give them a place to store all their equipment. Right now, we have hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting outside in the weather. It's just tough from the UV. It's tough on the tires, tough on everything, just sitting out there and getting hit by the sun in the weather. And again, we had money in there budgeted this year for the design of that. and we were gonna go out for services for that. We no longer need to do that with the addition of Steve. And so that is something, even if the funds are not appropriated or approved, now that he's on board, this is something that we will start putting plans together, and we'll have something to be able to move forward for plans and to be able to show you guys what we're looking to do and what we're wanting to do and where it's going to go. So we're going to move that project forward no matter what, but I wanted you to see what the cost might be associated with that. This water department eye hydrants. And so what that is this is new technology again. And so every time you talk about adding new technology, you add more money. But this is 5 hydrants that basically go out and they have they work off of the cloud. And so they'll monitor pressures, they'll monitor flow. And so some of these areas that we have, new interchange area, if we have a hydrant blow off, which happens, it does happen routinely. It's not occasionally, it's not, I mean, we just have that happen. If somebody was to go out there and open those, see, it used to be a big thing on Halloween to go open hydrants. We don't know, if we don't know that they're open, it could drain everything in town. And so it could be a real issue before we can find it. Not necessarily we want that in the newspaper, but it could be a big deal. It really could. And it has been a big deal. When we have big leaks in the middle of the night, we have all of our crews in, we're walking creeks and stomping through where we have our existing lines. If nobody calls it in, or if we don't see it when we're driving, you have to find that. You really don't have a lot of time to find it before you start running into issues. These would help isolate some of those, and we'd be able to tell if the pressure drops, they would notify our guys. And so this is a new thing. There are yearly fees that go associated with that. And until you get up to X amount of number of hydrants, that fee really doesn't drop very much. And so Richard and I looked at that. And so we're really just looking at putting in 5 of those to start off with and kind of spreading those out so that we can monitor certain zones.
How many hydrants do we have around town?
Short of 400.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
So you're talking about 5 out of, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Do these plumb into our SCADA?
they would.
Okay.
Yeah. They would.
So it's
So off of
an
that,
enhancement of our SCADA more or less.
it is. And so yes and no. So all of our SCADAs all hooked in via fiber, hardwired via fiber. These would be working through the cloud.
Yeah.
And they would come back through our SCADA, which our SCADA now alarms all of our guys. And so really could be the difference. I mean, hopefully you don't get into that situation very often, but every year it's just there's times where there's alarms going off and there's a leak. And if it's not in a high trafficked area, you just don't know. Not saying that this would prevent that, but if we had a major one, it would be sending additional alarms off that maybe wouldn't be going off. If we have a big leak on one side of town, if all 3 of our wells kick on, our guys probably are not going to get any alarm or alert other than all 3 of our wells are on. Well, our guys know that's a pretty telltale sign. Like, why are they, if it's not in peak time, why are the towers dropping in all 3 of them? And why can't we keep up? And so that's the type of things that those guys are checking all day, and that's what those alarms are set for. So this would be a really big benefit for that. Again, it's not a necessity. We've never had it, but it really could be the difference of water quality and being able to not get into those boil orders or low pressure orders. So again, this is where you see that water and sewer part-time staffing. Don't need to go into that. I will note that we did get, this is kind of off topic of that, but I will note that we did get some news from the prison just yesterday that we might be looking at getting the inmates back very soon. So if we do, that is a game changer for all of our departments. I'm so glad that we went in and left the money in the budget. We talked about taking it out, but for the amount that we've got in the budget, it really does make all the difference in the world. So that's really good news. This sewer collection skid mount rotor unit. So you guys have all seen the massive jet back that we have. And so, I mean, it's a $500,000 machine. It is huge. It is nice. It is new. The technology on it's great. It does a really good job on our system. However, if I were to pull up the map, I would show you that 40-50% of our sewer lines are all in the backyard of places. And so you can't get that truck in there. I mean, we don't even attempt to get it off the grass. That truck will be there and we'll tear it up trying to get it out. This would allow us to, this truck that I was talking about earlier, or one of these other trucks that we're trying to buy, this would slide in the back of that, or it'd go on a trailer. They can actually pull that off of that trailer and they can actually put that in the backyard. It would run off of our big truck. So all the water, everything would still run off of our big truck. But this would actually allow us to be able to get that stuff in the backyards without having to basically stretch hoses from here to wherever, trying to get behind houses, trying to get it in there.
How big a line will that work? Will that run?
How big of a line? It'll run. I would have to confirm with Richard, but I think it'll run every line that big one will.
Really?
It just a little bit different technology, and obviously it doesn't hold as much water. It's one thing that we found on too much information, but these new heads that you guys have bought, you guys approved cutters. We had not been using the appropriate cutters. That's what we had bought years ago. That's what we were told we needed for those trucks. These new cutters, one, just sound like a jet taking off in there, and they use about 2 to 3 times the amount of water that the old ones did, because now we're using the appropriate cutters on there. So I think it'll still clean the big lines. It's just a matter of trying to get the water there. So we actually modified one of our old trucks to haul water, and so we can hook another water truck to it if we don't have water available. So a new backhoe water and sewer for the water and sewer department. We would get a little bit of trade in, but we have a Volvo backhoe, which has been a very good machine. However, Volvo no longer makes that machine, and so anytime we have to have parts, which is quite often anymore, they have to come from overseas, and it is a real issue. So there's going to come a point where I'm going to come to you and go, we can't do anything with it. Luckily, we've got some pretty good guys that are pretty good with some equipment, and they've been able to make some of the parts for it, and they've been able to kind of just keep it going. And so it's still a really good machine, but there's going to come a point where we can't keep it going anymore. The next two, without going into a lot of detail for it, we're looking at that would allow us to do our samples down at the treatment plant. And so without boring you to death, we pay every time we have a storm event and we have to take those samples, and we take them every day. I told you it costs us $100 a day to take the sample somewhere else. We're still looking at and still working with DNR to see if they're okay with us doing that. And so if they are, these are 2 pieces that we would need to purchase in order to be able to do those in-house. Now, when we jump into this next part, I went ahead and left the city hall improvements in there just because I have not been told to take them out. Obviously, we are working through that and seeing how what we are going to do with this building, with that building, and how we're going to combine. No matter what we do, it's definitely a very known thing that we need more space. That more space is going to need more money. So I thought it would be best just to leave that money in there for you guys to see. And if you appropriate the funds that way, then that does give you some fluctuation on whatever you guys decide to do moving forward. But at least it puts, I'm not going to say that's enough money, maybe too much money. I don't think so, but at least that will put some money in there to do something with the city hall. City hall roof repair, again, kind of contingent on what we do here and there, but it has not changed anything. The roof still needs to be repaired. Same thing with the police and the street department. Even if we build that building down at the treatment plant for the water and sewer, that would free this building up here on McVeigh for the street department to go up there, which would be better purposed for, open up some space for the police department to possibly get their vehicles in. That building, I don't foresee us getting rid of that building anytime soon, and so that roof is not getting any better either. The website, Mark and I are still working through kind of the negotiations of that, and so you will notice that the appropriations for that the parks portion is higher than the other ones combined, but it is the parks is really going to utilize this, and as we've been talking with this company, it is going to be really cut and fit and molded for them to do what they need to do. And the biggest users are going to be on there for that. I mean, there's going to be a lot of bill pay, there's going to be a lot of notification, but there's going to be a lot of interaction with the parks. But this also, hopefully this will also include, there'll be separate modules that need to be purchased for the parks in order for them to do online registration and so forth. hopefully this will include the first year of that as well. And then again, I was really hopeful that we would be, that I would have already came to you and told you that we had an opportunity to purchase a bucket truck. Ours has got, I don't know, 350,000 miles on it, give or take, and it has been a really, really good truck that we bought from Webster Electric, but it is due for replacement. But we just haven't found that truck either. And so any questions on anything that I've explained from here to there?
No, but I want to interject real quick.
Okay.
So the way we started doing these particular growth areas is that while they are put into our budget as an approved expense, staff are not authorized to go forward with these expense without additional approval from the board. So anything that shows up in those operating budgets, that's green light go. Department heads take care of that as they need to. They come back to us as our procurement policy requires them to. But outside of that, they take off and run. These items are on yellow. These items, they have to come back to us, whether it's we need to consider need, we need to consider timing. You know, I, for one, am not comfortable with a $200,000 cash balance in the wastewater treatment plant. Granted, we all know why it's the way it is, but it gives me unease. But I also know that 100,000 of that's for city hall improvements, which probably isn't going to come out of next year's budget. Neither is the 150 above it for a brand new building. We may get through some of the planning stages, but we're not going to get through construction next year. So there's some of that game that you play with this. I will note there are two items that I'm not seeing in this that I thought I would, and that's the 2 police cars that we put in the police budget, but we put them as growth areas. Wouldn't they fall in this?
The new lease options.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes,
Okay, so we do
Yes.
need to add those in there.
yes. Because it is proposed to purchase those. Yes.
Okay. The other thing I'd like to point out is there is $104,000 within these growth areas that my principles of accounting are going to tell me shouldn't be here. Okay, because we're dealing with cash. So that means we should not be approaching anything that's an ongoing expense. However, the IT services is going to be an ongoing expense. That's not a one-time fund. That's an every year fund. The labor, you try your best never to pay labor out of cash. That's an operating expense. And then also the animal control training, as far as I'm concerned, that's an operational expense. That's $104,000 worth of money that truly needs to be back up in those other funds. However, without some other windfall in those accounts or other re-review of those revenues, they just don't fit. But I think it's very important that I point those out to you, that $104,000 of what we are going to expend, granted that's broken across several funds, but that amount of money isn't a good use of cash. However, it's also in the best interest of our city that we implement those sooner than later.
I think the only, and just to kind of further explain, the only reason they are in cash is because we don't have to do it. Like Natalie said, it is in our best interest to do it, but we don't have to do it. If we were looking at operation only and what does it take to operate the way that we operate now, that's what you're seeing in the operational budget. So the growth areas, what we've done as staff is we've taken that and said, okay, but to get to the next step, this is where we need to go. But that is a very valid and very good point, that those are continuing dollars. But we don't have to do them, but it is definitely in our best interest to do. I will also tell you that I've talked about this a little bit with Natalie in the past, and it came up before I turn this over to Mark. I'll just go ahead and lead off with the Parks Board have met, and they have recommended to you all to approve all of their growth, to appropriate the funds for everything for all of their growth areas. But then they also, because of availability and because of just because of the economy and where we're at, and because we're operating off of the same purchasing, basically the same purchasing procedures we've had for, and the amounts for, 20 years, 20 plus years. They are, they would like to see the administration portion, the purchasing authority go from 5,000 up to 15,000. I don't disagree with that. We have missed some opportunity on pipe. We've missed some opportunity on some stuff that we might have been able to jump on. And to be honest, that $5,000 20 years ago is not the same $5,000 today. We are working on our personnel policy. We need to look at our purchasing policy. Natalie and I have talked about that. So that'd be the appropriate time to look at that, is when we go through and redo that. But I did want to tell you that they did vote to recommend for you all to approve all of the growth areas, to appropriate the funds for them. And then to also consider when it comes back to raise that purchasing authority to 15,000.
We'll look at that after the new year.
So with that, if you don't have any other questions on the stuff up top, I'm going to turn it over to Mark.
All right, thank you all. I know you've been here for a while, so we've already talked about the IT services and some of the other allocations, new City Hall building, fiber ring, City Hall roof repair, and the new website. So that puts us down to the Patriot Park feasibility study. There's $30,000 in there for a feasibility study on the activity center. We are knee deep in the program plan with SAP Design on the program for that activity center. Depending on how that program works and which program gets chosen to move forward with first, will depend whether we want to spend this $30,000 on a feasibility study in 2022, or whether that is better served moved down the road closer to when we might build a full activity center. So that is in here for that, because if we go one direction, we'll need that feasibility study to be done. Underneath that, you'll see an additional employee. I know that Natalie just spoke on this. This was something that was in the budget from last year. This would be an additional 6-month part-time maintenance person. And one of the reasons we had that in here is because we don't have the prison labor. And if the prison labor came back, we could scratch this. We wouldn't need that $13,000 for that additional labor for the summer season, because we'd have those. And additionally, I will point out too, if for some reason we don't get the work release program back, there is some money for the work release program that could go in to relieve some of these funds if we did need this employee as well. Moving on down, we're in the negotiation phase with the disc golf. He's got topographical maps. He's working on a design concept to propose along with a final budget so that we can bring a contract back on that. Then we go down to the security for the concession stand. Had an estimate done quite some time ago. This would give us full security on that with additional lighting for the park and some things of that nature. Park signage, really looking for each one of our parks to have an entrance sign that has similar to design to it, so it flows throughout the parks. One of the neat things that we'll be able to do with that sign, we'll have the park's name and things like that on there, but we'll also be able to include our park website. As that website gets developed, we'll be able to include our social media on there, and then a QR code so people can come in and scan that QR code. It'll take them straight to our website so they can get some more information about that park or any of our programs that we have going on there. Patriot Park sign and construction, we met about this. This is the Dr. Tommy McDonald sign. The latest from Steve we had was $25,000, and that's what we put in the budget for that particular sign.
That sign on there twice.
Interset signs on there twice.
We have one that says we have Tommy McDonald pool signage, and then we have Patriot Park signage.
The
Yes,
pool
it is.
motor replacements, the park board asked that we put a pool motor on there for a replacement set of pool motors. This funds here, 15,200, will take care of putting a replacement motor on the shelf for every motor in our pump room there. That way we're set on go. If something goes down, we have a motor to replace that with, and we won't be down weeks of operation for the pool potentially. The concession stand at Rotary, I reminded the park board, but let me remind the Board of Aldermen as well. When that was built, we knew going in, and it was made particularly clear, and this was very early on in my position here when this came to light, that through the building of this, there were going to be things when we got the product that was finished there that we would need to add some to that to make it what we needed it to be fully. So this will take us to a finished product with heat and the additional sinks and things like that we need to make that concession stand and restroom space something that can be used year round for people. Right now we're seasonal there at that park because we don't have heat or insulation in the restrooms in that old stand. This will take us to year-round operation on that stand, on the new stand. We want to turn the old stand. We're kind of hurting for storage space a little bit. We'd like to turn the old stand and the restrooms into storage there at Rotary Park. And this would allow us to put in an overhead door and kind of take some of those barrier walls down there on the restrooms and use those spaces. It'll give us a space to have dry storage for the chalk that gets all over everything, and we can keep it isolated and separate from the rest of our stuff so it doesn't get all over the baseball or soccer equipment. We'll also be able to put the turf tractor that we drag the fields and things like that with right there on site at Rotary Park. Fencing for Ellis O. Jackson Park. That is going to be, now that we moved the leaf dump, we need to be able to keep vehicles out of that area and future dumping out of that area, as well as kind of secure that area for the disc golf course that will be going in. This is, will pay for the fencing and the piping specifically for that fencing out there at Ellis O. Jackson.
This will be a fence very similar to what goes around the golf course now, that pipe fence.
We have a rekey on here of the parks. We're kind of in desperate need of a rekey. I think just about everybody in the county has a key to most of the things that we've got going on there in the parks. This will allow us to kind of rein that in and hit the reset button on who has keys to what. In addition to this, I told the park board we'll need to have a new key deposit as well. And that key deposit is going to need to be significant enough that people are motivated to turn those keys back in whenever they're checked out.
I think Ann had mentioned, what is it at Missouri State? It's high.
It's $75 if I lose a key, and they issued me 3 of them.
Yeah. So it's high. It's got to be high enough
I
to,
panic every time I can't
you have to
find
make
it.
them want to bring the keys back.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's right. Absolutely. Basketball court at Massey is just in a state of disrepair. This would allow us to put 2 indestructible lifetime goals plus the cement in there. We've already got a striping kit for that. We need that basketball court at Massey. We need that second outdoor court as well for our programming. Now we're doing, 3-on-3 basketballs. We can also use those basketball courts as pickleball courts. So we're looking to program pickleball this summer, in the spring and possibly in the fall as well. Having 2 courts to play and practice off of as opposed to 1 will be a big help for that programming as well. Also, just to have another court there in town for our community is a big thing. So this will allow us to put the good goals in that have the lifetime warranties, and they'll take the abuse. We've got family games on the master plan at Massey. This particular expense, $5,000, would pay for a ping pong edition. And that's a delivered price on an all cement ping pong table. And it's a bring your own ping pong paddles and ping pong balls, but it's a permanent table there in the park that people can use to play. And this table, I've seen pictures of a Jeep parked up on top of them. I mean, they really do hold up. It's got a metal netting on it, a stainless netting that's attached in multiple places. And that's a really good ping pong table, which would allow us to move forward with some of our master planning for that park as well. Again, lights at Rotary. The basketball court there at Rotary, I've had several requests for that court to be lit. People would like to play, especially in the summer when it's so hot. People want to come and exercise. They want to come and shoot baskets. As we're programming now, they want their teams to practice. And it'd be nice to have a place for them to practice as they can do so when the sun's going down, etc. Looking at lights between $5,000 and $10,000. Talked to Marshfield Electric a little bit about this, and they can turn or mount a couple of lights that are on the poles where the tennis court lights are right now. But Sam brought up a good point. If we have lights on one side, that's going to cast a shadow across the court, and the other would supply lighting that's closer to the court, and it could be all around the court for $10,000 there. The last thing that has a price attached to it that you'll see here is a parks vehicle, and this would be for modifications to an existing vehicle that we might be able to acquire as vehicles kind of transfer in and out of other departments.
So Mark, Mark, let me interrupt there. So to go back on what we were talking about, the police cars, it took me a moment, but I probably maybe prematurely thinking that you guys might approve those. So when you look at those cash dollars for the general fund, those police cars that you're talking about, those are already figured into that. Does that make sense? So the two purchases for that and the light setups and the lease payment for the three new police cars are already figuring into that 1.3 figure. So
we either need to move them into operating or move them into growth area. One or the other.
One or the other, but it took me a minute because I knew that we had accounted for them, but to put those in the general fund, I didn't put them in the growth area because I just based off the assumption that we would probably approve those. They are accounted for when you look at that cash dollar, that dollar amount.
I don't mind that.
I apologize.
Growth area.
I don't disagree. So, but anyway, so to further speak what Mark's talking about, so if that frees up vehicles to be used in other departments, that's why you see the $2,000. Well, obviously we're not going to buy anything, but we're going to have to put, if one of those older vehicles goes from the police department to the parks, when we jerk the console out, we're going to have to replace that with a console. We're going to have to do some cleanup to it. We're going to have it detailed and cleaned up so that we can put our staff in there. And so there's some things that we're going to have to do to those vehicles once they get handed over. So. Sorry, Mark, keep going.
No problem. Thank you. I appreciate it. The last few things on the list here, there's a brick memorial and a tree ID at Rotary Park. What that is some years back, there was kind of a joint effort to put some trees in there at Rotary Park. And some of those have memorial markers associated with them. Many, if not all of those markers are kind of in a state of disrepair. They might have been, bedded down and evened up when they were put in, but as the tree roots grow, as we have erosion, all kinds of different things, vandalism even, those markers are getting moved and pulled up out of the ground and catty corner and just in a state of disrepair there, as well as the fact that some of those trees don't make it. Not every tree that you plant makes it into maturity or adulthood. And so we've got markers without trees, we've got trees without markers, we've got markers that have come up, and we need to do something with that. And this is kind of an idea to take all the existing markers and put it into one memorial. So the memorial of those trees is then preserved. And then as well, part of the process in that was to have an identification on the tree. So people walking through the park or educationally speaking, come through and see what species those trees were. So of the remaining trees where there were markers, we'd also want to put some ID tags in those trees that would identify the species of those trees. Then, as Sam alluded to earlier, kind of put some things on this list. We put the feasible things, but then, a couple of things that are in the master plan. Obviously, I could have put everything that's in the master plan on this list someplace, but one of the things that's needed for extended stay for people in parks as we begin to add to Massey Park in the master plan, need to be able to extend those stays, not only for the pavilion, but some of the programming and things like that. So eventually we're going to need to have some restrooms there for people to utilize. So I've got that on the list just to bring attention to it. And then the last two things on the list, you'll see trails. Obviously, if we've got a grant or there's some sort of wastewater or there's some sort of acquisition or ability for us to put in some trails in any of our parks, that is the number one thing in the community that the community spoke about and speaks to. When are we going to get some trails? What kind of trail does your community have? Are there different trail systems? Are there single track trails? Things of that nature. So that one's a big one. Just wanted to get that one on the list. And then lastly, in our park board meeting, the tennis courts were brought up, and we know that is that the tennis courts is really a topic, and I have to go out there and remind myself every now and again how bad those tennis courts actually are. I get to thinking, if I don't walk out there for a month or two and get out on that court, I'm thinking to myself, surely we can patch that, or surely we can repair one of those, or surely we could make one of those playable. And as I walk back out there, I just did so recently, I see why we can't, and I see where we have tried and failed, but we need to do something with those tennis courts. And so that is on the list as well at the request of the park board for it to be there as we consider, other options or exactly what we're going to do with that space.
We talked about the other night. One reason it costs so much to redo them is because there's 4 courts there. So I challenged them with, if we're going to redo it, do you want 4 courts there? Because obviously if you're going to redo 2 of them and have really nice courts, it's going to be half the cost. So just so they wanted a placeholder in there, no dollar amount. They wanted a placeholder in there in case an opportunity came up for design or anything else. So if we back up just so Monica and I know and clarification, I was under the assumption that there was 2 signs, but I saw some shaking heads. So I thought that there was one for Patriot Park itself, and then one for the aquatic center. Is that not accurate? Are those doubled up, Mark, or are those 2 separate signs?
No, they're in this right here. There is no sign for Patriot Park itself.
So where it says Tommy McDonald pool signage for $25,000, and then it says Patriot Park sign construction $25,000. Are those the same thing?
Those are the same thing, and I'm looking at a different list than you are. I don't see the Patriot Park sign.
Okay,
I'll just pull that out.
Yeah, we'll take that off.
Dr. Tommy McDonald.
That's my fault. I really thought that there was 2 different signs there because we've been talking about the other signs.
Right, with the schematic
Yeah,
design, but
right.
I don't think 25,000 will touch what they're looking at
Okay,
for an entrance.
okay,
It's just the honest truth.
okay.
Okay. So questions about the growth area items that are before you tonight?
And I will tell you, I agree 100% with what Natalie said earlier. It would not be staff's recommendation to approve all of the expenditures and leave a $200,000 cash balance in the sewer department. But that is the proposed growth areas for 2022. So it would not be our intent or our recommendation or even our desire to spend all those dollars.
So if you look at this page that's in your packet, this is last year's growth items. And then we make notes to kind of keep everybody updated as to when it's actually come back for approval and what the decision was. In some instances, we've just given a limit, go find up to 2 trucks and spend up to this amount of money. And there's notes in there that kind of help us understand how that money's been spent. You'll note there's a whole lot of lines that aren't green. That's because those are several years in the future, that's City Hall, right? Or those are things that just didn't fall into the plans for this particular year. Some of them are going to carry over to this and some of them aren't. That's the glory of this particular dream field. There's no obligation that we go forward with this, but it does put us in that proactive instead of reactive mode.
And some of those are just my calls to the department head and saying, listen, I'm not super comfortable with where we are for next year, so let's not pursue that. But if you'll notice too, there was not hardly anything approved prior to the 6-month financials coming out as far as off the growth area list, because I wanted to see where we were at after the 6 months, after we got through the first 6 months to say, hey, have we had a terrible year? Have we lost several pumps? Have we lost this and that? Have we lost equipment? Has the revenue been down? And so I'm not going to promise or guarantee that we would wait 6 months if these are approved for me to come back and hit you up for consideration for these. But I would not bring them back. It's not like we're looking to hit the ground in January and come back and say,
Right.
all right, now we want to start spending all of this money. We're
So-
not going to bring it back till we're comfortable.
Within our budget process, hopefully next month, we'll be able to approve a budget document. All of those numbers will stay the same, but in that column right next to it, we have what we call estimated actuals. It's because the year's not over and we don't actually know what those numbers are yet, right? So it won't be until February before the official budget document, the book, can actually be put together. Because then we really know what those actuals are. And we know the cash balances that fund all of this. So it has also been our practice that we didn't even recommend for going forward on some of these. Now, there may be some of these areas that are carryover from this year that I think should be given other consideration. And there could be items that have significant lead time just because of the world that we currently live in that maybe also need to have other consideration. But as a general rule, that's been our practice until we can give you a solid figure as to what our cash balances are. So you know what amount of money we're really pulling from. And we've had a little bit of time to see how revenues are coming in. January and February is not a good tell. They're just not. But it's a quick tell if they're totally in the wrong direction. So
Perfect example would be those police cars. If they're approved, we already know that we cannot get them until July at the earliest. So the earlier we can get on that list, I would recommend that if we approve that budget and we have another meeting after that, might not be a bad idea to get them ordered because we know we can't expend the funds. So if whatever gets approved that are time sensitive like that, I will let you know. But I mean, the soonest that we can get those ordered, the better off we're going to be. So.
But these will be the items, including the payroll that's on there. Those will come back to us before they are spent. Questions or concerns? Or other ideas that maybe we've thought of or talked about and you don't see here, you thought you would see here? Is there anything along that line? If there is, please feel free to reach out and let us know before we put the final version together. We can either get an explanation of why it's not there. Maybe staff has had a change of heart or a new idea. Much of what is reflected in here is just learning more from other neighboring communities. All right. We will move on to the last item on our agenda, which is a closed session. So pursuant to section 610.021 subsection 2 of the revised statutes of the state of Missouri pertaining to leasing, purchase, or sale of real estate, I am looking for a motion to enter closed session. Roll call, please.
Quick.
Bob's.
Aye.
Steve. Cunningham.
Aye.
All right. And we'll pause.